Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. The city of Nuln, the jewel of the Empire, the armory of the Empire, the largest producer of black powder weapons and war machines. In today's video, I'll show you how to paint the black and red uniform of Empire troops from Nuln, a great looking paint scheme for your games of Warhammer, the Old World. The first thing I've done is prime the model black, as this will give a nice solid base coat to work from. And first I'm painting all over with Corvus Black. Corvus Black is a slightly lighter black than the Chaos Black primer, so it will allow shade paints to show up more. If I just use the primer for the black, it will be hard to add any shading to the model, and as the black is such a key feature of this paint scheme, I'm going to paint all over it with Corvus Black. As this is black over black, a single coat should be enough to give solid coverage, but I'm making sure I keep the paint nice and thin as I paint all over the model, especially the uniform, with Corvus Black. Once the Corvus Black has been applied, you can see I have a nice even base coat, and with Dawnstone, I'm going to apply a dry brush. I'm applying this dry brush all over the uniform, but it's going to catch other areas as well. That's why I'm applying this first, so I can be messy and tidy up the other areas later. I want to make sure I catch all of the raised details and edges of details with the Dawnstone. This method will be much quicker than applying edge highlights to everything, and anything to save time when you have a load of these models to paint is always welcome. After the dry brush, the grey is looking quite stark, but with some Nuln oil, I'm going to knock that back. It's only fitting to use Nuln oil on a Nuln soldier, so I'm applying this all over the uniform areas. This will sink into the recesses, creating a shading and also darken down the Dawnstone dry brush to give a much subtler look to the grey and end up giving a really great looking uniform quickly and easily. This method is great for the rank and file troops where you need to paint lots of them. For heroes, you may want to add some extra details to the black, but for regular soldiers, this will work great. Once the shade dries, you can see I have highlighted the uniform, and the shade has knocked back that Dawnstone and given definition to all of the recesses. Now with Mournfang Brown, I'm going to paint the wooden spear. I'm applying this all over the shaft, making sure I get a solid coat. I'm also going to use dry brushing on the spear to create a wood grain effect, so I'm painting this next to avoid the risk of painting over other details by accident. Once the Mournfang Brown has a solid coat, I'm dry brushing XV88. I'm going to be more controlled here than I was previously, making sure I don't paint the uniform at all, just catching the spear with the dry brush of XV88. I want to build a strong layer of XV88, but leaving just a small amount of Mournfang Brown showing. After that dry brush, the spear's a little bit lighter. Now with Balor Brown, I'm applying another dry brush. Once again, leaving a bit of the other colours showing, but being quite heavy as I create a wood effect to the flat spear and also brighten up the spear, which will give that classic old world wood colour effect to the spear. The Balor Brown has brightened up the wood quite a bit, and now finally with Zandri Dust, I'm applying one final dry brush to really brighten up that spear. These colours all work really well together to give a great looking wood in just a few simple dry brushes. I'm being careful not to catch any of the uniform, but making sure that I catch all of the spear with some Zandri Dust. And after the final dry brush, the wood is painted, and now I can get on with painting the rest of the model. With Mephiston Red, I'm going to give the model that Nuln look of red and black. I'm picking a few details that I want to be red. These will vary depending on the sculpt, but for this one I'm painting this armour on his chest. It may take a couple of coats of red to build up to a solid coat on this area. I'm also catching the band around his leg. This pop of red will add some colour and interest to the lower half of the model. I'm being careful around the black as I don't want to paint over these areas I've already shaded and highlighted. I'm also catching the tassels by the tip of the spear. I'm also going to catch any other tassels or bits of decorative fabric on the model with some Mephiston Red as well. Just look all over the model and see if there's any details on the sculpts you're painting, and catch these with some red. That's added the red details to bring out the Nuln colour scheme. And now with Bugman's Glow, I'm going to paint the skin. I'm carefully painting the face to the model, making sure I don't paint over any areas I've already painted. I'm also catching the hands to the model as well. It may take a couple of layers to build up to solid coverage, but I'm making sure that I catch all of the skin with some Bugman's Glow. Now that the skin's painted, with Mournfang Brown I'm going to paint any leather details. There are these leather straps for the armour here on the back, which I'm carefully painting with Mournfang Brown so I don't accidentally paint over any of the black. I'm also catching the strap along the bottom of the back as well. I'm making sure I catch all of the straps holding on the weapons, like this one holding the knife to the leg. I'm also going to paint the shoes with Mournfang Brown. I normally paint shoes black, but as the rest of the uniform is black, having the shoes be painted brown would add some colour and interest to the lower half of this model. And with the leather painted, there's just a few more details left to pick out. Now with Rakarth Flesh, I'm painting this scroll detail on his leg. This could have been painted red, but painting this as a scroll will add some brightness to the model, as the Nuln's colour scheme can be quite dark. Now with Celestra Grey, I'm going to paint the feather. By using Celestra Grey, I'll have a nice base to add some shade, and when I highlight it, it should look like a white feather on the helmet. With those details painted, the only base coat left now is the metal. And for this, I'm using Lead Belcher. I'm painting all of the metal details, so I'm applying a couple of layers of Lead Belcher to the helmet, being careful to avoid painting over the skin or the feather. I'm also painting the tip of the spear, as well as any other metal details like the pommels and crossguards to the swords and daggers on the model. With the base coats applied, the next step is to shade the mini. So first with Reichland Flesh Shade, I'm shading all of the skin. I'm applying this to the face, letting the shade sink into the recesses to add some definition. I'm also catching the hands so the shade will sink between the fingers and add some definition there. Now with Agrak's Earthshade, I'm shading that scroll. I want this to darken down the colour a little bit and bring out the details of the folds. One here pulls at first, so I'm coming back and wicking away some of that excess paint with a dry brush, so I leave just enough shade remaining on the mini. And finally with Nuln Oil, I'm shading everything else. So I'm catching the feather, the metal, the leather, shoes and all of the red details. I'm being careful not to shade over anything that's black, as that's already been shaded, but I'm making sure I catch everything else with some Nuln Oil. If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And if you'd like to support the channel, please become a member by pressing the join button down below or joining me over on Patreon. And after the shades have dried, you can see the definition is added to the model. So now with some Cadian Flesh Tone, I'm going to highlight the skin. I'm catching the raised details like the tip of the nose, cheeks and eyebrows. I'm just applying small edge highlights on these details. By catching the most raised details, it's going to bring out some of those features. I'm also catching the knuckles and tips of the fingers with a small spot of Cadian Flesh Tone. This will bring out the shape of the hand, but while keeping the highlights simple and quick to apply to a lot of models. With the skin highlighted, it's added some character to the model. Now with Evil Sun Scarlet, I'm highlighting the armour. I'm applying an edge highlight to all of the raised details on the armour. There are these bands on the armour of this model that I'm highlighting just to add some extra definition. I'm making sure I catch all of them with an edge highlight of Evil Sun Scarlet. And now with the armour highlighted, next I'm going to highlight the rest of the red. For this, I'm using Wild Rider red. I'm catching the tassel by the spearhead, picking out the strands with a thin highlight of Wild Rider red. I'm also catching the detail on the leg. I'm highlighting each of the sections with a small highlight of Wild Rider red to bring out those details. And I'm catching all of the tassels, straps and other details with a thin edge highlight. There are quite a lot of small details, so I'm keeping my highlights nice and small, but catching all of the details just to make them stand out. And with the red highlighted, the model's really coming together. With Scrag Brown, I'm going to highlight the leather details. Catching the edges of the straps on the back, keeping these highlights nice and small, and just catching the very edge with Scrag Brown. I'm also highlighting the shoes, catching the tops, as well as any raised details and texture with a thin highlight. With the leather highlighted, there are just a few more details left to highlight. With White Scar, first I'm catching the very edges of the scroll with a very thin highlight. I just want to catch the very edge so the scroll isn't too bright, but the edges will stand out and add some definition. I'm also catching all of the strands to the feather on the helmet. I want to leave the shade in the recesses and a bit of Celestra Grey showing, but catch all of the raised parts with White Scar. This will brighten up the feather and make it read like a dirty white, which is ideal for a soldier from Nuln. And with the white applied, the final highlight's going to be to the metal. So with some Stormhost silver, I'm catching the tip of the spear first, as well as the rim to the helmet, catching these details with a thin edge highlight of Stormhost silver. And with the silver highlighted, that is how to paint an Empire soldier from the city of Nuln. Let me know in the comments down below, are there any other Empire cities you would like to see me paint? Or any other old world factions you would like? Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy painting!